Okay, so good morning, everyone. We will start the special virtual legislative meeting to approve the proposed budget. And so we'll start with a roll call provided by Mr. Swigart.
Thank you, Pam. Ms. Blitzstein,
Present.
Mr. Riddell Williams,
Present.
Mr. Epps,
Present.
Ms. Henry,
Present.
Ms. Lohman,
Present.
Ms. Mulhern,
Present.
Ms. Murphy.
Budget. And so we'll start with a roll call provided by Mr. Swigart. It's playing back.
Ms. Blitzstein,
That was on me.
we good?
Did we get capture everyone that's in
No, we did
attendance?
not. Ms. Murphy was last.
Present.
Mr. Schultz,
Present.
Dr. Whiting.
Present.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So I will read what's on the agenda for the purpose of the public. The administration recommends that the proposed final budget.
Point of order, Ms. Henry. Pledge of Allegiance is the next item.
You're right, but where is that on? Okay, you're right. I'm used to following. You're right. I see it there. Sorry. We will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I will, because we don't have a person designated for that, so I will say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Now I can move into the actual content. Okay. So the administration recommends that the proposed final budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025 be made available for public inspection as advertised, as provided under Section 687 of the Pennsylvania School Code in the following form. Notice is hereby given that the Board of School Directors of Cheltenham Township has prepared a proposed budget showing the estimated expenditures in the amount of $134,311,861 for the school year beginning July 1st, 2024, and that the same may be examined in the office of the Secretary of the School Board and the Superintendent in the Administration Building, 2000 Ashbourne Road, Elkins Park, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, as well as online on the district's website at any time prior to June 25th, when the budget will be presented for adoption at a public meeting of the Board of School Directors to be held at 7 p.m. on that date. Can I get a motion to approve the proposed budget?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments from any board members?
And Ms. Henry, before the board takes a vote on this item, you'll just want to open the matter up for public comment for anyone from the community who may be attending.
Okay, perfect. Are there any school board members that have comments? Mr. Schultz?
Thank you, Ms. Henry. I just want, since I wanted to underscore the nature of this vote, which is that it is a procedural vote. It's the proposed final budget, but not the final budget. So this does not reflect any actual decisions being made, but rather it's the beginning of the last stage of the budgeting process. And I was wondering, Mr. Swigart, since if you would be able to provide just a brief context around the content of this proposed final budget. I want to make sure I didn't misread anything, but my understanding was that it reflects approximately $1.3 million more expenditures than revenues. But the approach here is that we wouldn't, that would be made up. We'd pass a balanced budget in a month. It's just at this point, we're waiting to hear back on the state's allocation. And so we aren't raising revenues locally until we know what we have to raise.
That is correct. So this budget is in the exact same format in which it's submitted to the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And that was intentional so that all of the information there is public record, of course. As you mentioned, it shows a deficit of 1.2 million, which is a slight increase from the $900,000 deficit we showed at the Finance Committee meeting. We'll be back in February, where we took a more in-depth examination of our budget. The biggest increase there, just for public reference from last presentation, was around transportation and special education transportation. So you are correct also as well that this budget does not contain any sort of tax increase, as we're waiting on a very significant and material information to come out of Governor Shapiro's budget and its impact on Cheltenham School District directly, which is also, of course, why the approval date is so close to the end of our fiscal year, and the anticipated timeline for the adoption of the budget by the state of Pennsylvania, assuming it's on time.
Thank you, Mr. Swigart. I also wanted to highlight that we will be having the next conversation in the Facilities Committee meeting on June 11th, and that will be when we can really unpack the current state of the budget based on what's happened in the past in the 2 weeks between now and then. And I had one follow-up question, Mr. Swigart, around the expenditure side. Is it correct to say that this does not currently include allocations related to open negotiations?
That is correct. It does not include allocations for unsettled contracts.
Great. Thank you very much.
There, Mr. Burdell Williams.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Henry. So first, Mr. Schultz, thank you for raising that context, and for Mr. Swigart for explaining that as well, because it has been a little bit since we covered this at finance. So the additional context is helpful not only for myself, but also for the community as we are progressing through the process. I do want to underscore that this is the proposed final budget, right? And that we still have some information that we want to receive. But just in terms of expenditures, the one question that I have, I know on the revenue side, we're still looking for some good information, but from an expenditure perspective, are the expenditures themselves, is this is what we're anticipating, or based on what we gain back? I mean, I know it does not include open negotiations, but sans the open negotiations, is there any additional expenditures that we're expecting to see be different between now and the time that we come back to talk about the final budget?
I don't anticipate any significant changes to expenditures at this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. That's all I have, Madam Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams. Are there other questions from the board? Ms. Mulhern?
Thank you, Ms. Henry. Just clarification, and I think I know the answer to this, but I want to be explicit, is that I understand we are just approving the proposed final budget. It's not the last step. But the budget does not need to remain exactly as it is before we vote on the final. It's not one of those where it resets a clock if we change it, correct? The 30 days is the 30 days, regardless of changes. Does that make sense?
That's correct. We're just approving the version of the budget as it exists today.
Right. And it could be exactly the same. It could be different, a little different in the end of June. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from board members? Seeing none, there is a question in the Q&A from Mr. Bill England. Mr. England, can you state either in the Q&A or if you raise your hand, we can unmute you and state for the public record where you reside in the district? Mr. England, you've been unmuted. I see your hand up.
Good morning. I am
Good
Bill
morning.
England, and I live in the Elkins Park section of the Cheltenham Township.
And may I state also that Mr. England served many years on the school board and even as school board president, so. Mr. England, I see, do you want to state your questions and Mr. Swigart can provide responses?
Thank you, Ms. Henry. My questions are, just based upon what my understanding of the Pennsylvania school code is that you have your preliminary or proposed budget up today. And as several board members have indicated, this is subject to change before a final vote on your final budget. I believe, however, you want your proposed budget to be as inclusive as is possible with expenditures and revenue. And I believe that you want to indicate what the proposed tax increase and millage is, again, per my understanding of the Pennsylvania school code.
Mr. Swigert, you may be on mute, but
So that is correct. So as I indicated earlier, I don't anticipate any material changes to this proposed final budget. I made every effort to capture what I believe are anticipated increases in the state basic subsidies, included increases as proposed in the homestead, farmstead, the tax abatement program. And the one piece we're waiting on, just for reference, is a very large decision at the state level around a tax equity adjustment, which is addition to our basic ed subsidy in the amount of $2.2 million. And as the state budget goes, usually a proposal is made and the actual results lie somewhere between 0 and that proposal. But that is a very material adjustment. So that has a heavy impact on what our millage rate would be for this year. Did that answer your question, Mr. Inman?
I understand what you're saying, and there were budgets while I was on the board that didn't get passed until deep into the summer while we waited for the legislature and governor to do their work. However, I believe that you need in your best proposed final budget to indicate what the proposed increases are, recognizing this may change depending upon if the state does a job of honoring a settled lawsuit against the state to better provide funding for school districts. But my question is, what is the proposed percentage increase in taxes and the millage that represents on a preliminary proposed basis?
So showing a $1.2 million deficit and the potential for a $2.2 million state subsidy increase, the proposed millage increase is 0 because that state subsidy adjustment would cover our entire deficit.
One last clarification, if I may. So you have put forth a budget that shows a 0% increase in taxes and a 0 increase in the millage rate that is assigned to property taxes. That's what's in here, correct?
That is correct. That's what's in the proposed final budget.
And that is what is posted on the school district website or in this agenda?
Yes, you can find it on the school district website under departments, under the business office. It is also included in the board docs. This exact document is an attachment.
Well, this will be good news. I know there are people in the community who will be happy to hear that the school district is proposing no increase this year. We all know what it's like in most years when there has to be an increase.
Thank you, Mr. England. Are there any other questions?
Nope, that's all, Ms. Henry. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Schultz, I see your hand up.
Thank you. And I just wanted to confirm with Mr. Swigart that the current deficit, because the budget proposed does reflect a deficit with the belief, and I think it's a reasonably justified belief, that deficit will be filled in the coming month by the state. However, if it did not, just for the sake of record and clarification, that deficit reflects approximately a 1.1% increase it would reflect the equivalent. Those revenues could be generated with a 1.1 roughly percent increase in local taxes, correct?
That's correct, right around.
And again, that is not what is being proposed, but I think that might be helpful to just understand the scale of what that deficit represents. Thank you.
Mr. Burdell Williams?
Sorry, I couldn't get my hand down long enough, but Dan brought up the same point that I was going to make. Thank you.
Okay, so there are no additional questions or comments from the board. We will take the vote. All right, all in favor of the proposed budget, say aye.
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 And I am an aye. Any opposed, say nay. And so the budget carries, the proposed budget carries. So thank you, everyone. At this time, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved. Dr. Whiting?
Second. I saw
Thank you.
Dan off mute as well, for the record.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, the motion carries. The meeting is.